Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with a very sleepy Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
All right.
Boy, that Thunderdome's really taking a toll on your ass. Okay. What time did you go to bed? Whose idea was it to record at 6:45 this morning?
Some fucking idiot.
I love you.
Fuck gets up this hour of the morning?
It was your idea.
The fuck goes to sleep so goddamn late?
That was also your idea. Well, we appreciate what you're doing for us. I know you're working hard, burning it at both ends, and
I'm eating the English muffin with peanut butter so I can awaken somehow.
well, boys and girls, we're going to be talking
Ask
about.
me what I had for dinner last night.
I didn't have any dinner.
Neither did I. The exact same thing.
You don't hear me bitching about it.
Am I bitching?
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm making conversation.
Listen, we got a big show today. It's SummerSlam 1990. We've got a bonus show coming up on adfreeshows.com. We're going to cover SummerSlam 1992. And next week, we'll be back at you with The Rock's 99-2000. And then we'll keep the hits going on the 11th of September. We'll be here for the Honky Tonk Man. On the 18th, we'll be covering Unforgiven 2005. And then on September 25th, another profile show on Rick the Model Bartel. So much fun stuff coming your way here on Something to Wrestle. And we hope that Bruce will be awake for all of it.
Can't make no promises.
Let's jump into it. SummerSlam 1990. Believe it or not, yesterday was the 30-year anniversary. Happened August 27th from the Spectrum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's the third SummerSlam pay-per-view event. We've got 19,304 fans, which was actually the lowest attendance of the first 7 SummerSlams, but it's still a pretty solid gate, especially for 90. $338,450 from ticket revenue. The pay-per-view buy rate is a 3.8, which is significantly down from SummerSlam 89, which was 4.8. But by the way, this slide would continue. SummerSlam 91 was a 2.7 buy rate. Bruce, what do you think about the WWF in 1990? I look at it through little kid glasses. It was my favorite year, but realistically, business was down from 89. Do you attribute that to Hulkamania maybe peaking in 89? A great storyline with the Macho Man? Is the business cyclical? Was the Warrior not the guy to be leading the company? What would you attribute this falling buy rate to?
Fatigue. I think that people were the hype and the build and the familiarity with Hulkamania and everything leading up to it was had reached a peak, and it had reached a fever peak in many ways. That the audience, I think, was just a little fatigued and not embracing Warrior nearly as much as they did Hulk. They were embracing Warrior and they liked Warrior, but it just was different and it wasn't at the same level.
So do you buy into the theory that, and I mean, a lot of people subscribe to this, the wrestling business is cyclical. Sometimes it's going to be hot, sometimes it's not. And some of that is just based on the sort of ebbs and flow of society. Or do you think that it really is, up to the company to keep it hot?
I think that the cyclical argument, which by the way I subscribe to, it's also a cop out because you can always say, well, hey, that new all night gas station opened up down the street.
Right.
They got Diet Coke and refrigerators and Reese's peanut butter cups. You can get them anytime you want. So I need to get down there instead of watching wrestling and going to the SummerSlam. But like society, like anything else, man, there's good times and there's bad. And this wasn't necessarily bad. This was just down. This was just different. So the cycle of Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania, the illusion that it was coming to an end was definitely there.
Arn Anderson recently said, nobody wants to see a team that's 8-8, but when a team goes 12-0, now you've got everybody's attention. Do you feel like once Warrior beat Hogan, they thought that at WrestleMania, by the way, that perhaps he wasn't quite the same? Do you think it really hurt his character having that big loss at WrestleMania? Because we had never really seen that happen at a WrestleMania before. I mean, previously every WrestleMania, as it comes to a close, Hogan's in the ring posing, and now he's leaving with his head down. It's the first time we'd seen that.
Yes, but that just comes with change. That really is a matter of change, and that's a matter of life. So I think that if anything, in a lot of ways, as far as Hulk and the character of Hulk Hogan, that particular night made him stronger.
This is an interesting time for the company too, because we're no longer just doing WrestleMania. We've expanded to where now fans are familiar with the fact that we're going to have 4 big pay-per-views a year: the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. Of course, these days, Lord, it feels like there's a pay-per-view every weekend somehow, but the whole industry's changed. You don't have to go get a cable box anymore. Now you get the network and you pay one low price and you're good to go. Did you prefer the old school, we're going to have a major pay-per-view every quarter?
I did, especially, we did television in a way. It was all syndicated TV. So you saw it in your local market at different times throughout the week, usually on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, something like that would promote your local events. And you did live events, and then once every 3 months you had this big event that was hyped. So it was a much simpler time, boys and girls, and it was a time that you could take your time in telling a story and allow things to develop and allow people to get behind something and really get invested in it versus, hey, this is going to happen, bam, this is why it happened, bam, there it is, hope you liked it, bam, here's what's next. So it was a simpler time, and I think that stories were allowed to play out longer and that they were probably a little easier to understand and everyone got it because it wasn't so fast.
The major pay-per-view we're coming off of, as we mentioned, is WrestleMania 6, where we saw the Ultimate Warrior win the world title from Hulk Hogan. We did a full show on that probably like 3 years ago, available in the archives at somethingtowrestle.com. We're also on the heels of a Saturday night's main event, which we just recently did a show on a few weeks ago. Speaking of Warrior, he's going to be making his first high profile title defense here. He'll be defending the title in a steel cage at SummerSlam 1990 against a former rival of his, the man who actually beat him for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 5, Ravishing Rick Rude. Meanwhile, our hero for, I don't know, what feels like nearly a decade here, Hulk Hogan, will be making his long awaited return to the ring after a storyline injury at SummerSlam 1990. Of course, he's going to be taking on the man who put him on the shelf, Earthquake. We've got lots of news and notes as we head into this, but I do want to talk a little bit about Ravishing Rick Rude. This feels like the first major test for Warrior, you know, in sort of the post Hogan era after WrestleMania. It's his first pay-per-view. And of all the opponents, we choose Ravishing Rick Rude. Now, we've done a great profile on Ravishing Rick Rude in the archives, also available at somethingtowrestle.com. But we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Rude today. Why was Ravishing Rick Rude the right guy to showcase the skills and talents of your brand new champion?
We knew that Rick was the right guy because Rick had been able to do it with Warrior before. And it was an opportunity to put Rick into that upper echelon where Rick felt he should be. Frankly, where we all felt that he should be too. Warrior and Rude had good chemistry in the ring, and there was no, it was an opportunity here for Rick to come out, and it was a coming out party for Rick Rude too. And it wasn't just Warrior's first title defense. This was the first time seeing Rick Rude in a top spot, being able to carry that. And I think that Rick did carry it. And I think that Rick was an unbelievable talent, especially in his ability to get guys like Warrior over.
What's so fascinating to me about this is, and we're going to talk a lot about Rude today, but I thought he just had a home run performance here. I liked the training montage video that got us here with Rick Rude. I liked his new look, which we talked a lot about, cutting the hair, getting rid of the mustache. Talk us through how he really changed his presentation. It does feel like he's updating himself, and he goes from looking like 1985 to very much, the way you would want a wrestler to look probably in 1990.
Yeah, Rick got himself in incredible shape in a very short period of time. Rick was looking at the time, and I think this is when he had his son in this time frame. But good Lord, I remember going down to Tampa to meet with him and shoot vignettes with Bobby Heenan and Rood. And it was just a physical transformation and almost a mental transformation for him as well, to come in and just absolutely be on fire. And Rick Rude delivered it. I, in my opinion, didn't disappoint, didn't make anybody second guess anything at all in that return to go with Warrior. I thought he did a hell of a job.
Well, I want to come back to that, but first I do want to mention, you've told us before that Rude, Warrior wasn't his favorite person. And I think he may have even taken it personally the way Warrior handled him, or maybe didn't handle him, because I think you sort of alluded to the fact that maybe once before, when Warrior was working with Andre back when he was Intercontinental Champion, out of respect, he would bring Andre a bottle of wine or something like that and thank him for the match. Meanwhile, Andre really didn't have to do much in those matches, but he did carry a lot of respect. But you compare the effort that Andre put out versus the effort that Rick Rude put out, and Rick Rude was doing cartwheels for the Warrior. And I think he commented to you something like, I never got a thank you. I never even got a Gatorade. Was Warrior, what was the Warrior Rude relationship like? Were they oil and water? Did Rude have any respect for him? Had these guys fallen out of favor before the bell ever rang here at the pay-per-view?
Rude knew what his job was, and Rude knew that he was there to get this guy over. That was his job. But did Rude like him and or like that? No, he didn't. And Rude did feel disrespected and felt as if I'm doing all this work for you and you're reaping all the reward. So I think, yeah, a little resentment might be accurate.
Well, the thing that always gets me about this is, and Lord, we talked about this a lot when we covered Rick Rude, and I can't help but bring it up again. But why didn't get more opportunities like this? As far as I know, in a singles match, not a Survivor Series, big team situation. This is Rude's only pay-per-view main event with the company, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm just fascinated by, and we've often heard that the company would be booked sort of year to year. It feels like a logical thing that Rick Rude would have been on the short list of potential main event pay-per-view attractions for WrestleMania. And instead of us thinking, hey, maybe Hogan Rude or Warrior Rude at WrestleMania, we need a heel Sergeant Slaughter. I don't know. It just feels like Rick Rude versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania could have been big money for 7. It wouldn't have been as controversial as the Iraq thing. It would have been as hokey as Sergeant Slaughter turning heel. And at the end of the day, who would have given Hogan a better match? Sergeant Slaughter in 1991 or Rick Rude? Like, to me, Rick Rude would be the prototype of the type of guy who would sell his ass off and make everything Hogan did look incredible, but he never got that opportunity. Did Vince not see him at that level?
I don't know if it wasn't seeing him at that level. I think that when you look at it, where it matched up, did Rude have better chemistry, proven chemistry with Ultimate Warrior, and to be able to give Warrior his first big win as the champion, which is just as important to the general audience in his first big profile match? I'd argue that that was more important than a WrestleMania match with Hulk Hogan.
So main eventing SummerSlam with Warrior to you is more important than main eventing WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan?
At that time, for the Warrior and for the business, yes, because it was a building process.
Well, I'm not saying that Rude wasn't doing his thing to help make the Warrior. It just feels odd to me that we've got one of the greatest heels of all time. I mean, when you think about great heels of the 80s or 90s and just like your prototype heel, Rude and Hogan never crossed streams, and that doesn't make sense to me. It feels like there's got to be more to the story, and maybe there's not, but it at least feels like a missed opportunity, especially when you think about how well Rick Rude did on shows like Arsenio Hall and Regis and Kathy Lee. It feels like in a little press tour to try to promote WrestleMania, he could have been fantastic. And if we had to freestyle the Hogan thing for a minute, what if, Rick Rude were to try to do something with Linda Hogan, much like he had with Jake's wife before, the whole laying the big kiss on him and Rude awakening and the whole deal. Do you think Hogan was not cool with that
And maybe that's the reason it got pushed aside or we never saw it, because man, knowing what we know about Linda Hogan now, it feels like she would have eaten that up, the opportunity to be on camera and perform. I mean, 15 years from now, she's going to have a reality show.
Yeah, but that was before its time in that regard. And this time, this wasn't about Hogan. This was about Warrior. This was about a time of building the Ultimate Warrior to be the next guy, and you needed people for him to work with that would get him over in the right way. And Rick Rude was that guy.
Well, I mean, I think Rick Rude does a great job here is my point, but Warrior's going to have the belt for one more pay-per-view. And then at the following one, he's dropping it. So it feels like we're pivoting away from Warrior because we don't think that we can really count on him for the next WrestleMania. I mean, Survivor Series sort of is what it is. There's going to be a bunch of teams, but his next singles match on pay-per-view is against Sergeant Slaughter. Of course, the Macho Man's going to interfere and crown him. And now we've got a new champ, and it's Sergeant Slaughter. But it is just fun for me to sort of fantasy book. What if that happened with Rick Rude? And same thing, just put Rude in the Slaughter spot. I think WrestleMania 7 could have been badass.
A lot of what ifs there.
Here's another what if we don't have to think about. 3 days before SummerSlam on August 24th, you met with a WCW wrestler who was working under the name Mean Mark Callis. We've talked about this a little bit before, but 3 days before SummerSlam, and then he's going to debut at the next major pay-per-view. Things are happening pretty quickly for what will become the Undertaker here.
Well, we'd had a meeting scheduled, I believe in July at some point, whatever the hell would it have been? The Great American Bash where Undertaker worked with Lex Luger. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. And Taker had a dislocated hip. Worked the match anyway because the next day he was supposed to meet with Vince. That didn't happen, and it didn't happen because Vince looked at the Undertaker and thought, just another tall basketball player with red hair. Don't see anything special in him. And I had, first of all, he's working with Luger, so come on. That's like working with a broomstick that doesn't have any bristles and is nailed to the floor. Taker, that meeting was canceled, and I begged Vince to please meet with Mark Calloway because they were in a show in the Meadowlands, I believe, and I offered to get the Undertaker there. I said, look, I'll get this guy, just meet him. I didn't know him. I mean, I didn't know him from Adam, but I'd spoken to Mark, and I was a big fan of Mark's work. Plus, in my head, I had an idea as to what to do with him. So I had an idea, and that was the talent in my head that could pull off that idea. So I was pushing very hard to get the two together, and it finally happened.
Something else with some pretty notable names is going to happen here. Meltzer would write, in a surprise move, the WWF has hired Roddy Piper to take the spot vacated by Jesse Ventura as color commentator on its Superstars of Wrestling show. Piper may be starting at the TV tapings this weekend, although we've also heard he may not start until the following Superstars of Wrestling taping on the 28th in Hershey, PA. Piper won't be playing a heel role, but will instead play a babyface role and work with Vince McMahon. The split between McMahon and Ventura was because Ventura was offered a deal with a company called DreamWorks that is producing a wrestling video game for Sega Genesis. Even though McMahon had claimed that this would be competition for a WWF licensed video game by Acclaim for Nintendo, someone familiar with the industry said that the two games are in no way competition for one another. In fact, McMahon's WrestleMania game is more than 1 year old, and in that business, that means it has very little shelf life remaining. A lot to unpack here. Let's talk about Roddy Piper first. Was Roddy looking to do something in a way to come back and just not be taking bumps and making towns? Or is this something you have to go try to sell?
Roddy was looking to come back in general, and I don't know that Vince necessarily was looking for Roddy to come back on a full-time basis in the ring. I went back to looking for color commentators, and in 1981, maybe 80, 81, when Roddy Piper had gone into Georgia Championship Wrestling, was introduced as Rod Piper, the color commentator for Gordon Soley. Roddy did color commentary pretty much as straight as you could do it. Was very entertaining, not over the top at all, and then started very slowly interjecting comments about Bob Armstrong and so on and so forth, and became this character. Aside from just being a wrestler, he was introduced as a color guy, not a wrestler, and you had to pay to see Rod Piper in the ring. You had to pay to see him in live events. And the idea was, I thought Roddy was a very good color commentator and could replace Jesse, and we wouldn't miss a beat. So we kind of went after Roddy a little bit on that one to say, would you be interested?
It's fascinating, this relationship with Ventura and McMahon. Just so we're clear, make sure everybody has the right timeline here. This is before Jesse is going to sue for royalties. This is a totally separate issue. I think a lot of our listeners sometimes confuse the two. What do you remember hearing about this Sega Genesis business and the fallout with Vince and Jesse?
It was really nothing more than a contract dispute, and Jesse wanted to do his own thing and Vince wanting to do his own thing. So they couldn't agree to do that and didn't necessarily want to work together on it. Got to move on.
You know, what's crazy is the game never gets released. I mean, there were lots of flyers in the video game articles and they had different cover arts and things like that. But this is a Japanese exclusive game that now they're going to rebrand for, you know, the American market. And, the Fire Pro Wrestling series wound up being released by Sega eventually. But the original game was Thunder Pro Wrestling over in Japan, and they're going to sort of Americanize it and call it Jesse the Body Ventura's Wrestling Superstars. And then it never gets released. Eventually, something leaks online, but it feels like he winds up leaving really for nothing because the game never even freaking comes out.
Shit happens.
Meltzer would continue. In addition, the amount of money that game, even if new, and if it was competition for the Ventura game, was negligible in comparison to Ventura's value to the company. In reality, this split up appears to be more stubbornness than business, probably on the part of both. It's simply McMahon told Jesse he couldn't do something, and Ventura was in a position where he didn't want to be told what he could or couldn't do by McMahon. After putting his foot down, even though Ventura wasn't, what he was doing wasn't competition, McMahon couldn't appear to back down, and instead, this somewhat minor situation turned into a contract impasse since Ventura wasn't about to back down. I mean, that sort of hits the nail on the head, does it not? I mean, you have two headstrong guys and Vince didn't want to set a bad precedent. And that's probably something Vince had to think a lot about back in the days. You know, the idea of, oh, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile type thing.
Give me that word one more time. Into a contract what?
Impasse.
Okay. I don't think that's what you said.
I'm just making sure you're awake, Bubba. Are you going to talk to me about Ventura and McMahon's stubbornness, or are we going to worry about the way the hillbilly pronounces words?
I like worrying about the way Hillbilly pronounces words. Well, I think that the old impasse,
Thank you.
it just came down to a difference of opinion, and it really came down to Jesse digging in and feeling that he should be able to do whatever he wanted, even though he was under contract to WWE, and that's not the way that it goes. So Jesse dug in, Vince dug in, and Jesse had an opportunity here. Okay, you want to go quit. And I don't know that at that time, I know that Jesse kind of was having a little buyer's remorse there for a long time, but that was his choice, and that's what he wanted to do. He felt very strongly about it and moved on.
What do you mean he was having buyer's remorse? Talk to me about that.
I don't think that well, first of all, what Jesse was promised was going to happen. And, a lot of times people will, shit, you and I have been through it before and with some different talents and different people where, oh man, I hear that I can make X amount doing this on my own, or I can make all this money if I was just over here and allowed to do that. And then they get out there and they realize, well, either I have to work for that money or it's not really true. And in this situation, that's what Jesse found out. That, hey, maybe I should have stuck around a little bit longer. And now I'm looking for something else, because his video game world and all the promises that had been made by his people just weren't panning out exactly the way that he was promised at the time, or that he thought they should have.
When Vince starts to have an issue with somebody, a talent back in this era, you're sort of in the inner circle. Does he ever say, Bruce, reach out to so-and-so and see if you can talk some sense into him? Is that ever something he asks for your help with, or not so much?
Not so much during this time frame, and especially, with Jesse. Jesse was Jesse, and Jesse had an agent that we dealt with. So it made it difficult. Anytime that you have that situation, it just becomes a little difficult when the talent is removed from the actual negotiation process.
It's hard to imagine that he's done here in August of 90. He winds up suing in November of 91 for the royalties. So he's on the sidelines of wrestling for well over a year. He's filling some time doing some radio calls for the NFL. I don't think he's doing much else, at least in entertainment, certainly not in the wrestling space. Do you think if this stubbornness about this video game thing, if this had went differently, do you think he still would have wound up suing?
That's hard to know. I don't know if it just was that all of a sudden Jesse was on the outside looking in and things didn't necessarily pan out. So it's, well, shit, I've already lost this amount of money. Is there any way to go back and recoup? And I think that did have a lot to do with it.
What's interesting to me is it's, of all the people, if Ventura is going to be stubborn and wander off, of all the people to think, let's replace that with a more reliable guy, somebody we know we can count on, who we've always had great relations with. I know what to do. Let's call Roddy Piper. It feels like Roddy and Jesse were cut from the same cloth. Like, these are two old school, we're for the boys, screw the office personalities. It feels like they have a lot in common and could have both been, I don't know, a thorn in Vince's ass occasionally.
They did have some things in common, but they couldn't have been more different in a lot of respects. So, while on the outside, I think someone that, didn't have to work with them could say, oh, they're very much alike, but they were very different when it came to dealing with them. Very, very, very different. I could deal with Roddy one-on-one, and that was never an issue.
What's interesting is both of these guys, both Roddy and Ventura, are trying to work on this new tag team series for television. And Meltzer would even write, Piper's contract with Disney for tag team prohibits him from doing any wrestling for the WWF because of the injury risks. I mean, why don't you think tag team was a hit? Why didn't we see more tag team?
You ever see it?
I saw that one episode.
Well, there you go.
Was that really?
What's that?
Was it that bad? Really?
It wasn't good. It was pretty hokey. I just didn't think, I think that people saw it and realized that, oh yeah, this isn't good.
Well, I mean, I think the original idea was it was going to be a series, and it wound up just being a 1 hour deal. So it feels like, maybe they did an hour-long pilot, released it on TV because they thought, well, we got a bunch of money in it, but it doesn't actually become a thing. I feel bad for Jesse. It was like everything he's touching here is coming snake bit. Let's talk about something Meltzer wrote here. He says, to minimize the loss, McMahon hired Piper to fill the slot, even though many in the organization don't think Piper is the right person for the job. The thought was expressed to me that most announcers are there to get over the wrestling and the angles, but Piper's personality is such that he'll overshadow what they're trying to sell and just get over Piper. That may be good for TV ratings, but it won't help the houses. And listen, I got to tell you, until, I don't know, I was an adult, man, maybe in my 30s, I didn't really understand what getting yourself over versus getting the talent over is. And I hear that all the time from old timers, like, oh, it's not about you trying to get over, blah, 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 not trying to get yourself over. And now I can spot it. Sometimes you see on indie shows and it looks like the ring announcer is trying to get himself over more than the talent. So certainly I could see how that would happen on commentary. And now that I get it, maybe that makes sense. Did you have any concern that Piper couldn't help but be in the Piper business, or did you think he could do this very, very effectively?
Both. I had concerns about Roddy just wanting to get himself over and being in that position to grab that spotlight. However, had quite a few chats with Hot Rod about that very topic and saying, look, here's the concern, man. I'd like to use you for this, and we'd really love to have you on, but being on every single week is getting you over and will probably get you over stronger than if you were wrestling. So do what you do best, because Roddy did know how to get people over by talking. And Roddy took that as a challenge, is, okay, watch me get these guys over, and did exactly that by talking about them in the right way and being Roddy Piper and just looking at everybody that was in the ring as Roddy Piper and giving them the same treatment he would have given himself.
Let's talk about the dynamic on air. What's worked for a long time, it feels like, is a baby face and a heel. So Gorilla Monsoon's a baby face, Bobby Heenan's a heel, Vince McMahon's a baby face, Jesse Ventura's a heel. That feels like that has been the formula, and it's worked very successfully. But Jesse was a heel commentator. Roddy's going to come in as a face. Is there any concern about messing up that dynamic, and that has, proven to work so well for so long?
You still had a heel and a baby face.
Are you going to say Vince was the heel?
You said that.
I'm not talking about real life. I'm talking about on camera. Yeah, in real life, one of the first times me and you hung out, we were watching a football game in the background, and you don't even really watch football, and you were yelling Giga Maggies and shit like that when Alabama was playing Texas A&M. And you had no idea what was going on, but you just kept saying it. And I realized very quick.
That's because you had them loudmouth bastards in your damn den over there screaming about some tide rolling or some kind of shit like that. And I just thought that they needed their clothes washed. And who's ready for the tide? I'll roll. Because I just thought they were dirty.
So here's the thing. I realized in one of our very first meetings, our first times hanging out, this guy's a fucking heel. Do you think Vince inside his own brain thinks
First time you met me, you thought Vince was a heel?
Good morning, Bruce. Until you're back to normal. Do you think Vince considers himself a heel the way you consider yourself a heel?
Well, I'm not a heel, first of all.
Yes, you are.
That hurts inside where it counts.
You claim openly and loudly and proudly that he's a heel.
Yeah. And?
Okay. Listen, you're not making this very fun because you're just being cantankerous right now. Let's do one more thing.
Right now, I'm being cantankerous?
At this very moment.
I ain't buying that.
The interesting thing about the timing of all this, I got some more clarity as we're doing this show. Tag team only has 2 episodes, and then it's canceled. And that cancellation happens just 2 days before Jesse makes his final appearance as a commentator for the WWF. Dude, you want to talk about bad timing?
Well, again, everybody has choices in life to make. And if they are, look, again, it's Jesse's choice. Jesse had a choice. And yes, some things later on worked out for him. And in the short term, they didn't. But even in the long term, I think that people could argue, had he stuck with it a little bit longer, might have made the entryway into some other things a little easier as well. But that's Jesse. And I think that Jesse himself would probably tell you that his decisions and his career path were all perfect for him. So who's to argue?
Here's some other news and notes about folks who are looking to do something else. Both Bad News Brown and Haku have had offers to leave and go to Japan. Meltzer would say, we've heard talk of Brown leaving from time to time, but he always stays. However, with Inoki back in power, the talk in Japan is that Brown will become Bad News Allen and work mainly in Japan starting as early as September. All Japan trying to get Haku back in December to become a new tag team partner of Jumbo Tsuruta and eventually turn on Jumbo and feud between the two of them for the next year. Bad News is a guy who we know has, well, not always been happy with the WWE. What do you remember about him having an offer here? It does feel like this is going to be his last pay-per-view. Why was this coming to an end? I mean, I think on Bad News side, he would say Vince had failed to live up to his promise as making him the first black champion. But you've often said here on the show, Vince didn't promise anyone they were going to be champion. He was never promising title runs. That wasn't something he did. What can you tell us about his unhappiness and why ultimately this is going to be his last major show?
Well, from Bad News perspective, I don't think that Bad News felt he was getting paid the way that he wanted to get paid. There was an opportunity for him to go back to Japan, and Bad News liked Japan. He enjoyed it. So Bad News was looking at this opportunity as one to have a little bit more independence and more freedom and do what he loved to do. And Bad News loved going to Japan and working that different style and just having the freedom of not having to work every week in a regimented system. So for Allen, I think Allen used the excuse of, I wasn't making the money that I feel I should have made. I think that the schedule and the work had a lot to do with that as well. That he being Allen, wanted to go on and go do what he liked to do. That's wrestle.
I guess the thing I'm always fascinated with about Bad News is it feels like, he had all the makings of a top heel. And then, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we have heard over the years that he wasn't happy with the way he was being compensated. Who was handling that for the company in this era? I mean, we know, fast forward a few years, everybody knows that JR was, helping make payoffs and payroll and things like that. Who had that role here in 90?
Well, same people had it when JR says he was doing it. JR did first pass. There were a few people that did first pass. Pat was doing first pass at this time. I don't even know if JJ was with the company yet.
He was.
Still, it was probably Pat and Vince. Vince had final say. Vince would look over the payroll and make final approval.
Was there some sort of formula, a WWF way? You've told us before that, certain promotions said, oh, the champion or the main event gets this percent, blah, blah, blah. And we know the NWA champion used to get X percent, whatever. Was there a WWF formula that you knew of?
I mean, I always had my formula, but my formula came from Paul Bosch in Houston, Texas, and then later on from Bill Watts. And it's a feel. It really and truly is. And you look at what the gate is, you look at your percentage of what's left over that goes to the talent pay, and you start ciphering. So again, I had my way. I had my way of looking at it. Vince had his way. JR had his way. Paul Bosch, Vern Gagne, Sam Mushnick, Bill Watts all had their ways. So it's different, and it comes down to a feel, and you've got to listen, and who's drawing, who drew the house, where does that money go, and how hard they perform that night. So there's a lot of variables that go into that.
It sure is remarkable to think that Bad News was only around for 2 years. I mean, what an impression he made here. I mean, I know he was with WWF before in the late 70s, but from 88 to 90, he made quite the impression. It would have been cool to see what he could have done, but he, like Jesse, is going to wander off for greener pastures, or so he thinks. Let's talk about something that I found in the WWF magazine in 1990. There's an ad that reads, professional athlete wrestler, successful applicant to wrestle professionally at various arenas in the United States and abroad, participate in professional competitive wrestling events to entertain audiences according to established rules. Applicant must be strong, agile, and possess great athletic ability. Must have 5 years wrestling experience. Salary free, 40+ hour week, $2,000 a week. Please send resume to Job Service Technical Unit, Connecticut Department of Labor, 200 Folleybrook Boulevard, Wethersfield, Connecticut 06109. Refer to job order number 3062596. What is this?
There was some kind of law that you had to post like for jobs, what kind of jobs you were hiring for, whether they were independent contractors or full-time employees. It was some kind of Connecticut law.
I mean, did anybody ever actually take that seriously, or was there any guy somewhere like, oh shit, here's my chance?
I'll bet you any amount of money in the world that there were a lot of people that probably read that and sent in their homemade resumes, say, look at me, I won this match.
So great.
I think I could take that honky tonk man. I mean, he's just a honky tonk man.
Oh God. Let's talk about, the SummerSlam Fever special. It airs on August 19th. It's taped 4 days prior on the 15th in, Utica, New York. It was a sellout, and Meltzer would report on it. The actual best match on the 9-match special was Mr. Perfect beating Ron Garvin in 5:57. And that would probably only be a 1 3/4 match. And that's strictly for the performance by Perfect. Actually, for Garvin to have an effective match, he needed time. And this was a rush 'em in, rush 'em out type of show, with most of the matches lasting less than 3 minutes. The remainder of the wrestling matches saw Demolition smash, pin Jim Neidhart when Neidhart tried a sunset flip, but Smash held onto the ropes and sat on him for the pin. We gave that 1 star. The match itself was half a star at best, but a good post-match brawl in the aisle when all 3 Demolition ganged up on Neidhart and left him laying made up for it. Kerry Von Erich, who will no longer be Kerry Von Erich very soon, pinned Black Bart with a tornado punch in 2 minutes and 41 seconds in a dud match. Warlord pinned Pez Whatley with a power slam in 2:53 for half a star. Nikolai Volkov pinned Boris Zukov with a clothesline behind the head in 2:37 for a negative half a star match. Power and Glory beat a couple of enhancement guys in 2:35 when they did their finishing move of Hercules doing a superplex from one turnbuckle and Paul Roma jumping off the top rope onto the other guy from another turnbuckle. Jake Roberts pinned Mike Sharp with a DDT in 2 minutes and 39 seconds, and they had to pipe in a lot of fake crowd noise for this match. Orient Express would beat Shane Douglas and Sonny Blaze in 2:08. Jim Duggan beat Earthquake by DQ in 6:20 when Dino Bravo interferes. Hulk Hogan would run in with a 2x4 to make the save and chase both away, and they finished the show with his posing routine. Lots of interviews with most of the top names on SummerSlam. Ultimate Warrior and Kerry Von Erich now look like the Bobbsey twins. It surprises me that Titan changed Warrior's appearance, even to the changing of the hair color and hairstyle when they were pushing another guy as the top baby face with the exact same look. Talk to me a little bit about, the strategy and the theory behind airing a television special, but it feels like the matches, which maybe you would think are all just selling the pay-per-view, and maybe that's what this did. I don't know. The card just sort of feels thrown together. It doesn't feel like it's as focused on the actual card as maybe what you would present today. Was it just a different era?
It was a different era, and the idea behind the card was to promote to SummerSlam. It wasn't to give them SummerSlam. It was a just bulked up syndicated show that focused strictly on a big last minute sell to get to SummerSlam. That's all it was. It wasn't meant to be this ratings thing, or wasn't meant to be SummerSlam. It was meant to be the show that got you interested in it for one last punch to take you home and let you have SummerSlam.
What do you make of his critique of the Ultimate Warrior's look changing a little bit? And that is the case. I mean, you look at him at WrestleMania and you look at him at SummerSlam, there are some adjustments. Was that something that Jim Hellwig is doing on his own? Is that something that you guys are advising him to do? Talk me through that.
The face paint, that was a change. That was a structured change, just trying to make him a little more relatable, a little more human. Good luck with that. It did, just trying to get him to be able to identify with more people and not just be this crazy character. And Hulk had some human qualities to him that you could relate to. Same even with Savage. But Warrior being the madman, you had to, at some point, let them know there's a man behind there and that there's a human being. And that was the reason for it. It was trying to look at marketing him in a different way. Still can paint his face, just a little Warrior symbol. He can still be the Warrior, but it's not the full-flown face paint and everything. We got back to that, but it was an experiment to try and get there.
Do you try the experiment because you feel like business is down and we don't have the right indicators, so maybe we do need to try something? Or do you try it because you feel like, well, this is what worked for Hogan? Because if it's the latter, I do question, why wouldn't we have tried that before WrestleMania, not after? Because it felt like to me, when you took his traditional face paint off and instead of it just being on the cheek, like the way I remember Warrior is it covered his whole face and he had the big the big bangs and the hairsprayed hair and the whole deal, like the crazy bouffant hair. And as silly as it seems, that's the way I still remember the Warrior now. And I didn't prefer this look. It felt like it was not my same guy. And I'm not saying it was a different human. I'm just saying, you know, as Kevin Sullivan once said, you don't change Mickey Mantle's number. If this is working and we feel like this is the character people have identified, why would we want to deviate and make him look like everybody else?
Well, he didn't. You couldn't have done anything to make him look like everybody else. It was just a tweak in his presentation, trying to make him a little more relatable. That's all it was.
It's just fascinating to me. It doesn't feel like we would have done that for Hogan, but let's talk about something else that he writes here. He being Meltzer, pronouns bound. What's that?
Didn't need to do it with Hogan.
Why did you think you needed to do it with Warrior?
Well, because people weren't relating to him.
Then why?
Well, his fan base wasn't growing. It was staying the same, and it wasn't growing.
I got you. So he had a big fan base, but it wasn't the phenomenal growth that Hulkamania had, where it felt like a snowball rolling downhill. It wasn't getting bigger every week or every month.
Yes.
I got you. We didn't have the momentum. Well, you take a look at the way the Warrior is dressed here at SummerSlam 90, and you look at him at WrestleMania 6, and it feels like a small thing on the surface, but then you look at it, the face paint is quite the change. Let's talk about something else though. Meltzer says, for a promotion based on unique characters, its number 2 and number 3 baby faces will be too similar. And he also says, Sherry Martel had makeup to make her look like a monkey, and Brother Love did a segment with Hulk Hogan in the middle of the card. And you can tell that's what drew the house, because the place emptied out, even though the 2 main events were yet to occur. Actually, the best part of the show was commentary. A lot to unpack there. First of all, he's giving you a high five, saying that your segment with Hulk Hogan is what really drew the house. But people were leaving before the main events. And I got to think this was not the only time Hogan was in the middle of the card in this era. And if you start looking around as someone from the quote unquote office and you see, well, they're staying to see Hogan and then they're leaving. Doesn't matter what's on last. And they haven't
Whoa. Staying to see Hogan? Who's Hogan working with?
Brother Love.
There you go, big boy.
So all those fans showed up to see you, and Hogan just happened to be in your segment.
Yeah.
That checks out.
Yeah. They left after they saw me.
Talk to me a little bit though about when Vince starts to wonder, did we make the right call? I mean, I know Hogan has been adamant that you weren't making the right call, but he did business at WrestleMania 6. But it had to feel, I don't know, a little uneasy, a little unnerving when you've got this great momentum, or so it seems, and you're doing these shows and Warrior's our main event. He's on last. He's got a great story. He's got a great opponent, but they're hitting the aisles when Hogan's done.
Well, Brother Love. Facts are facts.
You gonna give me anything here? Or are we just gonna put yourself over?
I like putting myself over, because it was me. I don't know, if it's fatigue, even here, that being a long show, that maybe they didn't want to wait and they saw Hulk, and for many, many years, the audience was conditioned in that way.
Right. Hulk's last.
Hulk's out. Yeah. Hulk's last and you move on. But, more than anything, I think it was just the crowd was tired and the kids were there to see Hulk, and okay, there he is. Okay, let's go. So not a testament to anyone else's drawing and or lack of drawing ability.
But it does say something that, you've told us before when you first come to the company, you guys would do these marathon TV tapings but you would keep people hanging around for 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours by in between, you know, matches, announcing to the live crowd, stay tuned, fans. Hulk Hogan is here and he's going to be out as your main event. And so you would think that the crowd was asleep by the time this taping is over, but they hit that music and they come alive in a way you've never seen before. But they're not
magical for damn sure.
But they're not doing that for Warrior the way they did for Hogan. And that has to be worrisome.
They were doing that for Warrior if Warrior was the only alternative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you had both, there were still people that were in the pick'em department. So they would just say, okay, I'm gonna wait for Warrior, I'm gonna wait for Hulk. And they chose versus just staying for the whole show. And if you only have one, then you have an obvious choice.
Right. Let's get to SummerSlam, but before we do, I want to mention something Meltzer wrote here. Titan contacted Big Van Vader about coming in between Japanese tours as he does now with the NWA. This is significant only because Titan has never wanted to use anyone that wasn't 100% theirs or share with another group, which I guess shows how impressed some WWF people are with his gimmick and its ability to draw with the NWA. This is remarkable to think about what could have been here. Instead of him having that really historic run in WCW and then coming over, what if it would have happened in 90? That's something else, man. I mean, I think,
and that's Meltzer saying that he was going to work in between Japan tours.
well, let's mention, because let's give some context to it. July of 90 is when we see Big Van Vader's first match for WCW / the NWA. And here we are in August, and it's been reported that you guys had interest. And we know you're talking to Mean Mark, fresh off of his match with Lex Luger. When you're watching that same pay-per-view, is it you who's like, God damn, we got to get this big guy?
I think it was all of us just kind of looking at him and saying, holy shit, this would be a hell of an opponent for Warrior. This would be a hell of an opponent for Hulk. And looking at it that way, because it was really nothing more than that. And the idea of only having Vader part-time was not something that we were interested in, because we were looking for someone that could come in and work full-time.
Why don't you think it wound up happening? What, were you not able to give him some sort of a guarantee? Did you have some sort of money conversation with him? I'm curious why we didn't see Vader here at 90.
I don't think that Vader wanted to give up his Japanese gig at the time. He was happy doing that and making good money and being able to be home a lot more. So I just don't think that Vader was interested in that at this point in his career.
Let's get to the show. SummerSlam, first match, Power and Glory versus the Rockers. Everybody knows the Rockers are one of the best teams of all time. And I think Power and Glory are criminally underrated. Let's remind you how we got here. On the July 21st, 1990 episode of Superstars, Paul Roma is attacked after a match by Dino Bravo. Then the Rockers come to the ring for the following match. Roma accuses them of attacking him. The argument turns physical, and Roma was backed up by Hercules. 1 week later, Roma and Hercules appear on the Brother Love show and form their new team, Power and Glory. I love this tag team, and I don't know why I love it so much, but the silly glasses, the cut off sweatshirts. Tell me what you can about Power and Glory.
Two guys that were, Hercules was kind of coming off of a singles run, and I don't think that Paul Roma was, setting the world on fire by any stretch of the imagination, but two good looking guys with similar physiques and similar looks, but more than that, similar attitudes of really wanting to break out of the pack. And let's try to take these two guys and team them up and make something out of it. To me, it was an opportunity to pool their talents rather than try to focus on each one individually, because each one individually, I think, only had so much in them. But the team, they looked good together. They looked like a team. And it was a way to kind of salvage and elongate both careers.
What do you think of those silly red sunglasses? I mean, is that the most 80s looking thing you've ever seen?
Those were awesome.
I love them. I think me and you need a pair. I just need to find who's got them.
Yeah, no, they were great. They completed the look, man.
You know, it is a very simplistic look. Some silly sunglasses, some cut off sweatshirts that say power on one and glory on the other, throw a lightning bolt in the middle, and then let's throw them in some black trunks and black tights. Seems rather simple. Talk to me a little bit about who would have, I mean, is this something you involve creative services, or are these just the guys just like, hey, what can we find at the fucking Walmart?
I think, I actually think that creative services may have done a draw up on these, and the logo at least. And then the rest was, okay, here's the look, here's your stuff, and let's go try this. Well, and I do think that creative services, Debbie Bonanzio and those folks over there, that they were involved in this.
Talk to me about Shawn Michaels. He's coming into this match with a bad knee, and there's going to be some stuff written about it. Do you remember Shawn working this show hurt?
Shawn was very hurt. Shawn needed to get surgery, and this was during a time where, okay, if you were hurt and you need to get surgery, let's go out and make a reason for you to be out of action for a while where the audience can actually see it and not do any more damage to the injury. But it's already there and you got to have surgery anyway. So let's do it.
This is really the first time we hear about him having some sort of knee issue. We know he's going to have knee surgery in 97. And of course, famously, that's the same year where he talks about losing his smile, but he comes back, and I don't know. It does feel like he's had a series of knee problems through his career, but this is the first time that it rears its head during his WWF run, right?
Yes. Yes. And it was unfortunate. Shit happens sometimes, man.
Well, Power and Glory are going to defeat the Rockers in 6 minutes and 1 second. Meltzer would say it was obvious that Shawn Michaels was hurting just walking fast down the aisle. The Rockers usually run, and he wasn't ready to work because of his bad knee. So the only option, other than subbing him with Shane Douglas, as they've done on the house shows, was to do an immediate angle where Hercules jumped in before the bell and nailed his knee with a chain. Because of that, Jannetty worked the entire match. It's interesting that McMahon acknowledged Michaels was coming into the match with a knee injury, and the guys did about as good as they could considering they were limited in time. Fast action with Roma and Jannetty and lots of double teaming as well. Hercules still stinks, but with a hot partner, they'll make one of the better tag teams in the Federation. Roddy Piper kept saying the Rockers were like Mick Jagger and David Bowie, showing he's kept himself only 15 years behind the times on hot rock artists. Jannetty had Roma pinned and Hercules clotheslined him just before the finish, Hercules doing the superplex and Roma splashing him off the top rope. Jannetty was probably the best worker on this card. The heels left both guys laying after the match. Michaels did a stretcher job, and the way commentary went, I got the impression Michaels is going to be out of action for a while. 3 stars. Lots to unpack here. What do you think of Meltzer's comment that Jannetty is the best worker on the card?
I think that Jannetty is an excellent worker, and I don't know if he was best on the card, but he definitely was an excellent worker.
It's interesting that, Jannetty is held in such high regard as a bell to bell performer, but it's the out of the ring stuff that's always kept him in trouble. I'm sure, me and you never talked about this, but I'm sure it at least came across your timeline and you saw some of the craziness that Jannetty's name has been attached to this year.
Yeah, it's just a shame, and I've never understood the need to share everything about your life out in public. as you know, this is about as much as I'll do, and I don't subscribe to it. Don't try not to do it. And people say, "God damn, Bruce, you do a podcast every week." Yeah, I do. I just try to keep personal things personal.
Yeah. You always play, with Stephanie's particular challenges here or there. You don't comment on it at all. You just, I mean, if it comes up, it's because I'm, trying to rally some prayer warriors for you here on the show, but it's not like you're putting any of your business out there.
Yeah, and then so I just think that that's kind of on Marty's part. It's tough to comment on because you don't know what's fact, what's fiction, and what's just trying to get your name out there in the public.
I hope that Marty can pull the nose up. I mean, he's one of all of our favorite wrestlers, growing up. We grew up with him, and I don't want to see him in a bad way. So I hope that he can get some things straight, and it would just be great for him to have a second act.
I agree.
Let's talk about Power and Glory. They're, as I said, one of my guilty pleasure tag teams. I absolutely love their finish. I think they had a cool look and presentation, but they're only going to last like another year and then they're done. Why don't you think Power and Glory had a longer run? Was it just, were they a little too late? Like if they
I
would
think that having a year run at that time is a pretty good run, frankly. And some guys didn't even get to have that.
right.
But having a run at the time that they did and being able to go out there and people still talking about them today, I think is pretty damn impressive.
Why, when they needed a manager, did you guys look to Slick?
It may have been as simple as Slick needed someone to manage. And it may have been just as simple as, hey, these guys will work with the Doctor's style. Not much more than that, really.
Did you not think that Hercules and Roma were capable of doing a good promo, or was it more heels have bad guy managers in this era?
You tell me. What do you think? I don't think that Roma and Herc were a good promo, and I think they needed help. And plus, heels need managers.
Well, yeah, that was sort of my thinking. I mean, I'm not saying that those guys were going to come out and cut, Rock and Flair level promos, but it does feel like, at least in this era, if you're not sure, do you cheer this team or boo this team? Cause they kind of look cool and they're doing cool power moves, and look, they just beat the Rockers. It must be pretty good. But if you've got Slick over in the corner, it's like a little reminder. Oh yeah, we're supposed to boo them because we don't like that guy.
Bastards.
Next up, we've got Texas Tornado winning the Intercontinental title, pinning Mr. Perfect in 5 minutes and 13 seconds. Meltzer would write, Tornado catapulted Perfect into the ring post and then used the claw, which got a big reaction. So an awful lot of the fans must be familiar with watching wrestling from other promotions, and pinned him with the tornado punch. Pretty bad match. 1 star. Meltzer would note the match was originally supposed to be Brutus Beefcake challenging Mr. Perfect for the IC title. Beefcake, of course, had given Perfect his first pinfall loss right after, or right at WrestleMania 6. However, Brutus was involved in that parasailing accident on the 4th of July. Gary Von Erich, who had just come into the WWF about a month prior to this, was then put into the match. A lot to unpack here. Had Brutus been in the match, was he going to win the title, or was Perfect going to get his win back from WrestleMania 6?
God, I would hope that Brutus Beefcake would win the title. It's Brutus Beefcake. I don't really even remember, but I know that it was the perfect opportunity to debut Kerry, get Kerry out there and get Kerry into a big name right away, make some impact, come on in and win the championship. So working with Perfect is not a bad gig to be in as well.
Oh, no doubt. It's just fascinating to me to think that we may have actually had Brutus Beefcake as Intercontinental Champion. I mean, I think as it is, The only titles he won in the company were tag belts, you know, once way back in the day with Greg Valentine, and then fast forward with Hogan. But yeah, Brutus Beefcake, Intercontinental Champion, I don't see it.
Could have happened. Should have happened, probably.
On paper, this feels like it could be a great match. You've got Kerry Von Erich, who's now wrestling here as the Texas Tornado. What a look. I mean, he's compared to our champion, Warrior. Incredible physique, natural charisma. Fans were popping for the stupid ass claw, dumbest finishing maneuver in the history of wrestling. And Mr. Perfect is freaking Mr. Perfect. My goodness, these feel like prime opponents, but it just doesn't click. Had Kerry lost a step? Did he not have it? Was Mr. Perfect slowing down? Was he not motivated to work?
No, Kerry lost a foot.
Oh gosh.
What?
Do you think his work changed that much with, when he lost the foot?
I do. I think a little bit of his confidence was lost as well. That, you know, Kerry became, I don't want to say obsessed, but concerned definitely with his work, how he did what he did at that time, so that people wouldn't think that he was working without a foot.
Let's, I don't know why this match wasn't better. I mean, do you have any, I mean, is it really as simple as sometimes guys just don't have natural chemistry? When you watch this back, do you think somebody had an off night? Because on paper, and I'm sure you've done this a lot, where on paper it feels like, man, this will be a fucking great match. I mean, we know 1 year later, Mr. Perfect with a horrible back is going to put on the performance of a lifetime with Bret Hart, but it's just not possible here with Kerry for some reason.
It was a clash of styles, and it was also a clash of, hey, we need to get Kerry over in quick fashion here. And it just didn't necessarily jive. Sometimes the best in the world can't get a match out of somebody. And then that same somebody can go work with, you know, another guy and be perfect.
It's been rumored that both the British Bulldog and Bam Bam Bigelow were also considered for this spot before it ultimately went to Kerry. Is that true?
This spot as in winning the championship?
As in filling in for Brutus Beefcake. It was originally Beefcake Perfect. Beefcake's down. Supposedly, there's 3 names considered: Kerry Von Erich, the Texas Tornado; Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog; and Bam Bam Bigelow.
It wouldn't shock me at all to think that they were considered. I just don't know if, you know, Kerry coming in, I think it was the perfect opportunity at that point to put Kerry in that picture. So I just, God, I don't know that it would have been as good either. I don't know that Bam Bam in that spot, I don't know that anybody in that spot would have fit. Having Kerry there, I think it was the right thing for Kerry.
It feels like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like British Bulldog in this spot could have worked just as well. Certainly fans in the Northeast would have been just as, maybe more familiar. But then again, we're in Philadelphia. These are the hardest of hardcores. And when he slaps the claw on, they pop. So they've been watching other wrestling. Were you surprised that the claw got the reaction it did?
No, I think I would have been surprised if it didn't, because of all the syndication that World Class had all throughout the area for so many years. And the audience, in many ways, Kerry was one that you could look at and say he came in already over because of his world-class exposure.
He's going to be with them 2 more years. He's going to leave in August of 92. And even though it wasn't a super long run, there's a lot to unpack. I can't wait for us to talk about it. I've got all my notes ready to go. We do have a bonus show planned for adfreeshows.com. And as soon as Bruce gets awake one day, we're going to make that one happen. Let's talk about the 1990 Royal Rumble. That's where we would see Sherry appear on the Brother Love show. Brother Love would discuss the definition of a lady using Sherry as the example. He then discussed peasants, bringing out Sapphire as an example. Sherry and Sapphire fight, which leads to Savage and Rhodes fighting. And then Rhodes and Sapphire would face Savage and Sherry at WrestleMania 6. Rhodes and Sapphire, of course, win the match with a little assistance from Elizabeth. And leading up to SummerSlam, Sapphire had been receiving gifts from an anonymous benefactor. Sherry winds up winning her match with Sapphire by forfeit because Sapphire never comes to ringside. Meltzer writes, in that way, this match was tons better than it was figured to be going in. After the match, they did an interview with Dusty Rhodes, who was trying to figure out what happened, which was the storyline for the night. What happened to Sapphire? And Jim Duggan comes in and does a line and showed that he had no future in acting. Then again, if you watch Duggan wrestle, you'd think he had no future there either. So a little cheap shots here from Meltzer. Tell everybody the storyline here with Dusty and Sapphire and this mysterious benefactor.
Miss Sapphire, you in there? Baby, it's the Mercury Dusty Rhodes. Hello, Miss Sapphire. Why ain't you there? Hello, baby, listen, they're looking for you for your match with Miss Sharon. Understand she whooped your ass in the shower not long ago. Where you at? Bitch, get out the fucking room. Let's go. Yeah, the storyline all throughout was that Miss Sapphire was being lured to the other side by that devious, nasty, despicable $1 million benefactor to the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase. And I thought it was a fun little story, man.
In real life, was Juanita Wright not enjoying her run? Why's the decision to sort of phase her out here?
It wasn't phasing her out. It was putting her with DiBiase, and it was just something that, from the standpoint of we'd done a lot that we could do with Dusty, and it was another personal issue that Ted DiBiase taken the common woman away from the common man and manipulate her with money. It's an age-old adage. Everybody's got a price for the $1 million man.
It is pretty interesting that this is going to be sort of the end of the Sapphire deal. I mean, I know you say that, oh, well, she's with DiBiase, and she is briefly. We see a lot of vignettes of her ironing his money. She's doing favors for him, and she's going to leave the company not too terribly long after. Virgil does an interview in the WWF magazine, all done in kayfabe, and says the reason she left is because DiBiase took all his gifts back. But I think she did, or Sherry Martel did a shoot interview once where she says that Sapphire's admiration for Rhodes was legitimate to the point that she broke down crying when the office told her they were going to break her and Dusty up on screen. And after that, she sort of lost interest, and that's the reason she wound up moving on. Is that the way you remember it?
Sapphire was tired. She was tired of being on the road, and it took its toll on her to the point that she just was not happy being on the road all the time. I don't know that she was happy with Dusty either. It was a lot of wear and tear. Sapphire was up there in years and just didn't want to do it anymore. Couldn't really do it anymore.
It's a shame. I loved Sapphire. I know everybody piles on and says, oh, it was a rib and blah, 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 but I'll be damned if they didn't make it work.
I don't think Sapphire ever did anything to get ribbed and have to, I get it. They think that she was put with Dusty to rib her and things like that, but no.
Let's talk about the next match. It's Warlord pinning Tito Santana in 5 minutes and 28 seconds with a power slam. This feels just like filler to me. Meltzer says Tito worked really hard to carry this to a worthless match. Warlord is a monster, but completely useless. Gives it a dud rating. This just feels like a waste of time to me. I think the rumor once upon a time was it was originally supposed to be Tito Santana versus Rick Martel, which would have made a lot of sense, the former tag team partners. But Martel has pulled off the show a few weeks prior because he's got an injury. And the storyline reason is he's got a modeling obligation in France. Do you remember this being the original plan? It was supposed to be Martel and Tito, but Martel was hurt.
Big modeling opportunity in French. Yeah, it just, the whole Martel Tito was a natural, just based off of their former relationship and the work style. Those guys could absolutely go, and that's an easy match and an easy angle. And Rick being hurt had to have something for this, and well, by God, you got the Warlord. Some people say, good God, look at his arms.
Oh God. The next match is a 2 out of 3 falls match for the World Tag Team titles. It's Demolition defending against the Hart Foundation. And this is actually a rematch from the very first SummerSlam back in '88, where Demolition beat Hart Foundation. On the March 31st Superstars, the Hart Foundation challenged the WWF Tag Team Champions after WrestleMania, and the Hart Foundation would face the Rockers on April 28th, Saturday night's main event, number 26, where Demolition would interfere and cause a double DQ. Fast forward to the July 14th Superstars, and Demolition and the Hart Foundation are going to fight after the Hart Foundation claims Demolition has 3 members, and this is an evidence of cowardice. Following week, a match between the teams was scheduled for SummerSlam, and the stipulations are it's 2 out of 3 falls, and only 2 members of Demolition will be allowed at ringside. Of course, that leads to the match here. I can't believe this is real, but the Hart Foundation captured the WWF Tag Team titles from Demolition in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And here's what Meltzer has to say. The Harts have new gay looking ring outfits that look to be designed by Michael Jackson. My God.
My God, how can he even? I mean, but think about that. Think about that comment that Dave Meltzer said, and I mean, what is that even supposed to mean? That's disgusting. But go ahead.
I don't get it either. This was the best match of the show.
Subscribe to him.
Yes. So you say dumb shit sometimes too.
You don't subscribe to me.
Motherfucker.
I don't lie to you.
I subscribed to you before anybody. I was subscribing to you and nobody was. I don't want to hear that. I was your first subscriber.
Yeah, well, okay, but I've never lied to you. I don't lie to our listeners.
Oh God. You've lied on this show so many times.
Nope.
You gonna tell me that whole Booker T Triple H thing? Let's move on. Meltzer would say this was the best match of the show, both for the plot of the match itself and mainly for the ring work of Bret Hart. The first fall saw Crush pin Bret after the backbreaker elbow drop finish at 6 minutes and 18 seconds. The second fall saw the Hart Foundation do the heart attack on Smash, but Crush jumped on the ref for the DQ in 3:28. And the third fall saw Axe, who was banned from ringside, run and hide under the ring. Then Axe and Smash switched places, and they did a few more switches. Hey, these guys aren't exactly the Twin Devils. Anyway, the Legion of Doom comes down to ringside and pulls the guy hiding under the ring out. A melee ensues with Bret pinning Crush with a schoolboy in 4 minutes and 3 seconds, 3.5 stars. Dude, do you want to talk about great tag team eras? 1990, my gosh, Rockers, Power and Glory, LOD, Hart Foundation, and oh yeah, Demolition.
Y los Gemelos Diablos.
Is that Twin Devils?
See?
What'd you think of the match here? This is a guilty pleasure.
Excellent.
I love the Hart Foundation. I love Demolition. I love this Freebird thing they're trying. As a kid, this is really one of the more prominent spots you would see the Road Warriors. It's the first pay-per-view they've done with you guys. I absolutely ate this up. Thought it was tremendous.
I thought it was excellent, and I thought that it was fun. I forgot about the the finish on this, and I just thought it was superbly done because you had 5 guys that really loved to work with each other and had a very snug style. Everybody in there, they worked tight, and Brett, Neidhart, Barry, Crush, Edie, good Lord, man, they were tremendous. And I thought it was a great match.
A lot of talent in the ring here. We know that Axe is probably looking to do some other stuff. Smash and Crush are doing their thing here. Do you think the Demolition thing is sort of petering out here by the summer of 90? I mean, they've been a top team for a long time, but it's not going to be too long before we reshuffle the deck and everybody looks totally different.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was, and Demolition, I think that they had solidified their place as kind of like the top tag team in the industry at that point. And then you look at the Harts coming in. We had some great tag teams during this run.
The next match is Bad News Brown and Jake Roberts. As we mentioned, this is going to be one of Bad News's last shows. This whole feud begins when Jake sends Bad News a birthday present on the April 22nd Wrestling Challenge. Upon opening the package, Brown finds a rubber snake, to which he reacts with horror. On the May 5th Superstars, they agree to a match. Brown later stated that his fear of snakes was cured, and that was quickly proven wrong. On the July 28th Superstars, a match between Brown and Roberts was scheduled for SummerSlam with Big Boss Man as the special guest referee. And Bad News said that he would bring 200 pounds of Harlem sewer rats to counteract Damien. So we've got Jake and Bad News here. They're going to go to a DQ in 4 minutes and 43 seconds. Meltzer would say, funny that Bad News did 2 leg drops during the match. It's supposed to be a no-no to use someone else's finisher. Bad News hit Jake in the ribs with the chair for the DQ. Then he goes to leg drop Damien, but the Boss Man made the save. News attacked Boss Man, and Jake pulled out Damien and chased Bad News away. The 200 pounds of ghetto rats, which was the only buildup that was based upon this match, never came into play. I'm kind of thankful for that, by the way, Bruce. Thanks for not bringing out 200 pounds of rats. What'd you think of the match? This is old school, classic WWF stuff.
Pretty straightforward and simple, but it was pretty straightforward and simple. Not, going back and watching it, it was slow motion, not the greatest match in the entire world, but I had fun during the time with the sewer rats. It started out with a big cage full of rats. Then we went to, man, they're just rats, to we need bigger rats. And then we went to possums, which are just big rats. And oh boy, those were some interesting times, to say the least.
Next up, as we know, Bad News is going to leave the company. And, I alluded to it earlier. You didn't comment on it, but it's been said that Vince told him he was going to become the first WWF world champion of, African-American descent. Was that talked about, making Bad News the first black champion? Had you ever heard that?
I had never heard that. And again, I go back to, I could absolutely hear Vince saying, I could see you as WWE champion at one point, but I have never heard Vince say, look, I promise you we're going to make you the champion. I've heard him lay out, hey, we're thinking about doing this, no promises, and it could or could not happen. So I think a lot of times, most times, talent hear what they want to hear.
After Bad News winds up leaving, Akeem is putting his spot on the house show tours. So it'll be Akeem and Jake around the loop. And, they're still billing the matches as Harlem street fights, which, say what you will. Next up, we've got
Akeem was familiar with Harlem.
Oh, of course. Yeah, he's a one-man gang. Yeah. Next came Brother Love with Sergeant Slaughter. Meltzer would say this was reminiscent of the classic Brother Love with Morton Downey and Roddy Piper from WrestleMania in the way it dragged and how bad it was. Slaughter said things that should have gotten heat, but didn't. They're going to have a harder time with this guy than I thought, at least from the reaction here. The segment was a bomb. What do you remember about this?
Well, I remember that, again, some people's opinions and views are completely worthless. I thought this was the greatest thing on the card. And
Come on, man. Why are you being like that? You know, it wasn't the best thing on the card.
says who?
Well, anyone watching.
That's not true. Sergeant Slaughter was awarding a Great American an award, and it was very touching. And by God, it was nice to be on SummerSlam.
You still have the Great American Award, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Think you got that handy and we could get a picture of that online somewhere?
I put a picture of that online somewhere. I have to find it. Because I don't know where the hell I have it right now. It may be out there somewhere.
There's also,
I've had Dr. Tom in my house going through all of my shit for the last week, so I have no idea where anything is or what the hell's left.
is he still there?
He is still here.
You know, what's funny is I came up with an idea for him yesterday and I pitched some guys in the office and they all loved it. And I was thinking, man, I should text Bruce about that. I was like, I'll bring it up when we're talking on the show, but I thought we would do it off air, but, I'm going to text you about an idea I have for Tom. See what you think. And
Well, you better do it. He's only here another day.
I'll make it happen fast. Hey, I do want to talk about something else here since we're talking about brother love. There's like a postcard that I actually got from a listener once you and I started doing the show. It says, greetings from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, but they scratch out the LY and it just says the city of brother love. And it's got, you know, some stuff downtown in the background. And then there you are all swagged out with 48 rings. What was the gist of this? I'm not sure. Like, was this something that came to try to get you to order the pay-per-view or some sort of a coupon about getting a pay-per-view? You've told me before, I think, that they gave it to people who worked in the building. What do you remember about this?
No, this was the pay-per-view reminder card that went out in all the cable systems. So when you got your cable bill, you also got the postcard reminding you of SummerSlam coming up, and be sure and order SummerSlam. So that would go out to all the cable subscribers.
And by the way, it says Monday night, August 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, replay 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. In a steel cage match, the WWF champion Ultimate Warrior, trademark, versus challenger Ravishing Rick Rude, trademark, with manager Bobby Heenan, plus the return of Hulk Hogan, trademark, with Tugboat in corner, versus Earthquake, trademark, with Dino Bravo, trademark, in corner. And you've got little pictures of headshots of the Warrior and Hulk Hogan both doing their best constipated pose. This is interesting for a variety of reasons. I've always been fascinated with the way you would market your pay-per-view products and things like that. How far in advance would you have to have this to the cable systems in order for them to deliver this with the bills? They would have gotten it in May or June or something like that.
No, for something like that, probably about a month ahead of time. 6 weeks.
And it's also interesting that the show's on a Monday night. These days, we're all conditioned that wrestling pay-per-views are Saturday or most of the time Sunday, but Monday night, you guys were very much experimenting. Of course, in this era, Survivor Series was usually on a Thursday night, but a Monday night pay-per-view.
Nuts, I know.
What's the thinking?
I look back at some of those and go, what the hell?
Is that before you guys really identified your quote unquote best practices, or did you have research that said, no, Monday night is the right time or whatever?
I think that we were still in the experimental stage of trying to figure out when the best time was. And we weren't looking at, for summertime, you didn't have to deal with kids in school. So you didn't have to worry about a weekday. But I think as time wore on, it was better to have one specific day that could be that pay-per-view day you could really promote to.
Talk to me about, when obviously Slaughter is going to come back. I think after WrestleMania 6, Slaughter sends a letter to Vince saying he wants to come back, and you guys come up with some sort of idea about, all right, we're going to do something. But this whole invasion situation in real life with Kuwait happens in August of 1990. So it's not like he came back explicitly with this idea. What was the original creative or hope with Sergeant Slaughter when he comes back here?
I think that originally the idea was one of, from Sarge's point of view, probably come back as a baby face, but deep down, Sarge really loved being a heel character, and he played the heel character so well. Maggot. It was easy to do, and it was a lot of fun to do. So, Sergeant Slaughter is the heel Sarge. To me, is a win-win every time. Then when you were able to add in the real life Iraq situation, which I don't know is good or bad. In the beginning, it was, all right, hey, great, we've got something to sink our teeth into. And then later on, it was, oh, wow, this is too much. So in the beginning, I think a heel Sarge was the right way to go.
Was the original idea going to be he's going to turn his back on America because they've accepted the former Russian heel, and now, he's a babyface with Nikolai?
It was so easy. Yeah, I mean, it was so easy. How could you love a Russian? And how could you love someone that had done all these nasty things to our country that I fought for? So that turn in and of itself was easy. And then later on to get into Hogan, who represented everything that was red, white, and blue, it wrote itself.
Well, up next, we've got Nikolai Volkov and Jim Duggan taking on the Orient Express. Nikolai would begin the year partnered with Boris Zukov. They were known as the Bolsheviks. After Lithuania, Volkov's homeland, declared its independence from the Soviet Union on March 11th, 1990, the Bolsheviks split up. Hilarious. Volkov became pro-America and was presented with the American flag by Jim Duggan, and now they form a team. They go 3 minutes and 5 seconds with the Orient Express. They pick up the win when Duggan pins Pat Tanaka after a clothesline that missed. It gets -1 star in the Observer. Meltzer would say the match was worth -1 star. Duggan and Volkov singing was worth a negative star, but I added a star for Tatanka's great bump from a move that completely missed at the finish. If they keep Duggan and Volkov together, they'll have the worst tag team in the business. What'd you think of the match and Meltzer's write-up?
Well, here's the thing. You guys said that mine was the worst thing on the show a minute ago, and now this is the worst thing on the show. Y'all got to make up your mind. Just saying. This stunk. This absolutely stunk. Really bad. And I felt kind of sorry for old Pat Tanaka. And yeah. It wasn't great. It was really the shits, as a matter of fact.
The next match is Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage. We touched on the background for their feud earlier, with the whole Sherry Sapphire match. Savage is going to pin Dusty in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Meltzer says the whole King gimmick for Savage seems to be done away with. As the match started, Ted DiBiase and Virgil came to the interview area and announced that Sapphire was with DiBiase. Rhodes went up to the podium and Savage jumped him from behind in the aisle. Anyway, Sherry gave Savage the purse and Savage hit Rhodes with it for the pin. The angle may have been better if they had done the match with Sapphire in the corner and she double crossed Dusty herself, causing him to lose. And then they did the interview and that left with Dusty chasing him. Another bad match, -1 star.
Yeah, but it was fun.
It is fun. It is a moment, but we've seen these guys work together at WrestleMania and the mixed tag, but all around the loop. I mean, they were doing really, really well. And this feels like it's sort of the blow off in just 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Overall, you were happy with it?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I mean, it was a means to an end, and it was an awful lot of fun to see Sapphire come out. Sapphire, what are you doing? What are you doing, with that man? He's $1 million man. That man is evil. Oh Lordy, what am I gonna do?
I love you for that. Let's talk about how we're getting to the next match. It's Hulk Hogan and Earthquake. As Hogan was being interviewed on the Brother Love show on the May 26 Superstars, he's then attacked by Earthquake. Earthquake's going to hit Hogan with a chair and then hit him with the big Earthquake splash. And then Hogan was taken from the stage on a stretcher. And he didn't appear on WWF programming for nearly 2 months. And the company's even going to tease his possible retirement. On the July 14th Superstars, Hogan reveals that he is going to return against Earthquake at SummerSlam. Tugboat is supposed to be in his corner during the match, but he's attacked by Earthquake and Dino on the August 18th Superstars and receives 2 Earthquake splashes himself before being saved by his pal, the Big Boss Man. Tugboat is also carried out on a stretcher, and his kayfabe injuries are preventing him from appearing at SummerSlam, and therefore Big Boss Man replaces Tugboat in that role. Meltzer would say, "Here's the story on Tugboat as best I can figure it. The TV injury angle that aired this weekend tied up all the loose ends and is the explanation. However, all inside the company publicity for not public knowledge is that Tugboat is going to be at SummerSlam and at all these shows. So even though it's technically just an angle, it was not an angle planned out far in advance. Word is that Tugboat's quick rise to stardom swelled his head, and Vince was giving him an attitude adjustment, and at the same time building a grudge for Tugboat versus Earthquake matches in the fall. Tugboat is still with the company, but not making any dates, nor will he be at SummerSlam. In addition, Boss Man has been pulled as the special guest referee in the Roberts Brown match, which again shows that this is late improvising and not part of the original master plan. This is something I hadn't read before, that Tugboat's quick rise to stardom swelled his head and Vince is giving him an attitude adjustment. You've told us before that maybe one of the original ideas was Chic Tugboat. Talk to me a little bit about what really happened here and why Tugboat wasn't here at SummerSlam.
Well, what really happened is we got into Sarge, and Sarge being the heel and Sarge coming in as the Iraqi sympathizer. So the focus then had to move over there as Earthquake, Tugboat just didn't fit into that equation anymore. I can't say that I ever heard that there was whatever the hell lies Meltzer was saying there about Tugboat. I've never really heard that before.
Why move away from that though? Like, why do the injury angle and not have him here and replace him with Boss Man? I don't follow the logic if what Meltzer's saying isn't true.
Well, anything Meltzer says isn't true. Name something that he has said that's true.
Let's not get down that. Here's what I'm saying.
Well, you just said why would it be because saying
well,
true?
You haven't given me a logical explanation as to why Tugboat's
the
not
logical
here.
explanation is that the idea behind the Tugboat, if you continued along that road of being Hogan's best friend and what have you, then what do you do with him? The idea was originally he's Hogan's best friend. He turns on Hogan to go to WrestleMania. Now you're not going to do that because you have a bona fide heel in Sergeant Slaughter already made that is a better attraction going into WrestleMania. So you need to get rid of the other guy at this point. And unfortunately for Tugboat, that's the situation he found himself in. He wasn't getting up to par, and he was a big guy, impressive son of a bitch, and one hell of a nice guy to boot. So it was an unfortunate situation for him, but that's all it was.
I'm having trouble with the timeline, I guess, is the thing. Like, we know that Chic Tugboat is something you've told us about before, but just this month in August of 1990 is when the whole Kuwait thing happened. By the end of the month, he's not even involved in the situation anymore.
That's how fast it happens.
So the Chic Tugboat thing was pitched in weeks later, you decide, no, we're not doing that. We're going to go with Slaughter. I guess that's my point I'm trying to drill down. You knew at this point we're going to have Hogan Slaughter at WrestleMania 7?
That's what you're going to build to. Yes.
Okay.
That's the whole reason for bringing Slaughter back as a heel.
It's just, I know we started the show talking about him, but I just can't help but circle back to it. If I'm looking at my most marquee match for WrestleMania 7, my first idea wouldn't have been Hogan Tugboat. My second idea wouldn't have been Hogan Slaughter. I would have landed on the third idea that never happened. Hogan Rood. Come on, man.
You got Rood going in and working with Warrior and getting Warrior over.
I know. No, I'm not saying here. I'm saying at WrestleMania.
I understand that. But Rood was being used to build your new champion at that point. You didn't want Hogan going after somebody that Warrior had already picked.
What did Rood do at WrestleMania 7?
I have no idea.
Nothing. He's not even on the
go.
card. We got Earthquake and Hulk Hogan going to a double count out.
Here's what I think you should do. This is seriously. You should buy a wrestling promotion, and you and Dave Meltzer and Wade Keller and Dave's little sidekick. You can make him your world champion, and y'all all book all the shit. And I want you to put all that Conrad money into it, and let Meltzer put all of his money into it in his extremely genius mind, and have everybody come over from Japan, and y'all just God, from the sounds of it, shit, he's a genius, so he could book, and you would be printing money.
Let me just apologize right now for being a fan of Rick Rude. That's my bad. I didn't realize it was going to piss you off so bad today.
I'm a fan of Rick Rude too. I loved Rick.
Okay. Well, you're hot about me being a fan of Rick Rude.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Not.
Earthquake beats Earthquake by count out. Earthquake beats Earthquake. Let me try that for the third time. Hulk Hogan beat Earthquake by count out.
You must be reading the Observer again.
I'm not. Jesus Christ. Can we fucking stop? Why are you so cantankerous about anything with Meltzer?
Because I can't stand him.
Then what are we going to do on the goddamn show if you're just being a petulant child?
Well, I know I'm going to set the record straight is what I'm going to do.
By the way, if you want to hear what really happened at WrestleMania 7 from Bruce's side, that's available in the archives. It's a hell of a story about security issues, because this Sergeant Slaughter business with a terrible buy rate and ratings was just so hot. Hulk Hogan beats Earthquake by count out, 13 minutes and 9 seconds. Hogan appeared to be 270 pounds, and at that weight looked small next to Earthquake, who is deceptively tall at 6'6" compared to Hogan's 6'5". Given the two guys in the ring, the match was booked and worked smart. Not a good match, but not a bad one either, and actually very predictable all the way through. Quake did Earthquakes, but Hogan kicked out and did the Superman comeback, foot to the face, body slam, which he'd failed to slam him twice earlier, and then a leg drop. Jimmy Hart interferes, and they both wind up outside the ring. Hogan ducked, so Hart hit Earthquake with the megaphone and slammed him on the table, and then he jumped in to beat the count. After the bout, Earthquake was choking Hogan, and Bossman hit Quake hard 3 times in the back with a chair before Quake would finally sell the chair, and Quake's back was pretty cut up from that chair. Good spot there. After the match, Hogan did an interview which basically guaranteed he would wrestle Warrior at WrestleMania, 2.25 stars. A lot to unpack here. Why a count out? Is this because you still want to do house shows with it on top?
Yeah, you had Hogan and Earthquake going all around the horn, wanting to protect that attraction and keep Earthquake alive here, but also be able to slide Bossman into that role when Hogan wasn't able to make those live events. And here you go.
I am interested. Why not Tugboat there? I feel like I'm beating the Tugboat drum, but it's been established that Tugboat is his best friend. What was wrong with just paying that off? And then moving forward, as Hogan moves on now, Tugboat and Earthquake could have been opponents. Instead, it looks like it's going to be Bossman Earthquake. Why not just keep the original version of Tugboat in there?
I think that the CDRF needs to book that match.
Well, I mean, some of these guys are dead now, so that's going to be hard.
Well, I think that the CDRF would be the perfect place for all that to happen.
Well, I think you can FUCK off.
Hey, that's rude.
Well, yeah, we're talking about Rood next with Ultimate Warrior, but slow down. You're getting ahead of yourself. After the match, Hogan does an interview where he basically guarantees he's going to wrestle Warrior at WrestleMania. And I think that may have even been the original plan, leaving 6, because the poster you guys released, that's pretty rare, that I'm lucky enough to have one of, and I know you've got somewhere. It's got the LA Coliseum, and it's got a series of flags on the Coliseum. The WWF flag, the WrestleMania 7 flag, a Hulk Hogan flag, and an Ultimate Warrior flag. Was the original idea thinking, hey, we'll do these guys at 6 and then come back with it at 7, but the buy rate was disappointing? Did Warriors run not really meet expectations? Why the pivot? Because it still feels like that's there was
no pivot. It was never the plan to do Hogan and Warrior 2. There was no pivot. You take your 2 biggest stars and you put them on the poster.
Okay.
But then the guy that thinks that he knows it all, well, this is exactly what they're doing. So that Clint from Hershey can say, well, they figured it all out because it had them on there. So that's exactly what they're going to do. And if they do anything different than that, then it must be a scandal. No, it was 2 biggest stars in the company. That's why their logos were up there.
What'd you think of Hogan's promo after? You didn't think that was a tease for the Warrior?
I think it was Hulk Hogan being Hulk Hogan and talking about what he would naturally talk about. And when you look at exactly what happened, it all comes to fruition, because it was Hogan in his quest for the WWE Championship.
Next up, our main event. It's a steel cage match for the world title. It's Ultimate Warrior defending against Rick Rude. We mentioned earlier how Rick beat Warrior at WrestleMania 5 for the Intercontinental title. A few months later at SummerSlam 89, Warrior would win the belt back. So this is technically the rubber match 1 year later at SummerSlam 90, but not for the mid-card belt, for the big belt. And leading up to the match, as we said, Rick has cut his hair. We see all these great training vignettes with Rick and his manager, Bobby Heenan. You told us about shooting those in Tampa before. Believe it or not, this is Rick Rude's final pay-per-view match. His final record is 6-4-1. He's 0-2 at the Rumble. He's 2-0-1 at WrestleMania. He's 1-2 at SummerSlam and 3-0 at Survivor Series. Of course, we know he's going to wind up coming back in 97 after a successful run in WCW and briefly appearing in ECW. And we've done a whole show on Rood in the archives. Really a tremendous show. Go out of your way to check it out. You can get it ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. The match itself sees the Ultimate Warrior keep the WWF title, beating Rood in the cage in 10 minutes and 1 second. Meltzer would write, Warrior had the complete face paint back on and a different hairstyle once again to make him look nothing like Kerry Von Erich. No matter what anyone says, the company is obviously unhappy with how he's getting over when they make these weekly changes in his look and character. They both juiced within 3 minutes to get the cage gimmick over, but the match was really slow paced until the end as they had to pace themselves for the long match. Rood came off the top of the cage. What a spot that was in 1990, but didn't try to escape as Bobby Heenan went berserk. Rood came off near the top of the cage a second time, but Warrior punched him. Then Warrior tried to escape at 7 minutes. Heenan hits him with the cage door. The finish would see Warrior do the Superman comeback, 3 clotheslines, and go over the top for the win. 2.5 stars. As a little kid, man, I love this. I love the way Warrior was slinging the belt around over his head. And I even liked the idea that Bobby Heenan was furious that Rood didn't just finish the climb over, because this would have been the first time that somebody in Heenan's quote unquote family was world champ. And I guess that could have even been a tease that there was going to be some sort of split down the road between Heenan and Rick Rude. We didn't see that exactly. What'd you think of the match watching it back?
I thought that, look, as far as Warrior matches, it has to be in the top 5, and Rood always was able to get a lot out of Ultimate Warrior and be able to carry him to a decent match. And in this case, it was no different. It was a good match. It was a different style match for Warrior. And you believed that, hey, Rood is good adversary for the Ultimate Warrior. And I could believe that Rood could beat him. Right. So that to me is what made the match so good, and that you looked at it and you believed it and felt that it just wasn't somebody in there for Warrior to beat.
It's remarkable to think that this is really it for Rood here with the company. I mean, he is on a lot of the promotional materials for Survivor Series, but he winds up being replaced by Haku. Do you think that the big dispute ultimately just came down to, I mean, JR famously says it's all about cash or creative. Was he unhappy with his SummerSlam main event payoff? Was he not happy with the creative of not being put into one of those spots? What really is the root of his unhappiness that leads to him leaving? It's been rumored that it's all about the paycheck he got for this particular match.
I think it's a combination of both. I don't think that Rick liked being second fiddle and that's my words, not his, but from the standpoint of not being the top heel and having everything focused around him, Rick really wanted to be the guy. And also it comes down to money. And for Rick Rude, Rick kind of felt that, and I can't really argue this in a lot of ways, is that Rick felt he brought Warrior to that point and then took the next step with Warrior to get him over even stronger to the audience. So he felt that he should have been paid equally, if not more, than what the Warrior was making. Now, how anybody knows what anybody else is making, I think a lot of times that's just speculation and hearsay and innuendo, and I wouldn't put it beyond any of the boys to stir that pot. Oh, so-and-so made this, when they never really know or have any clue whatsoever. And I think that a lot of those factors played into Rick leaving and just being fed up to the point where he said, okay, I want to move on.
In real life, Rick Rude and Bobby Heenan were not exactly best of friends. I'm not saying they disliked each other, but it's been written over the years that Rude probably would have preferred to have just been by himself and not with a mouthpiece. He didn't think he needed that. And
that was perpetuated a lot by Warrior, who felt that Bobby in their matches stole their heat and stole their reaction by Bobby doing what Bobby always did. And that was help enhance the match.
I guess my question is, who is sort of Rick Rude's, who can he confide in here and get little big brother advice? Does he have any I mean, it's not like he can call Bob. I mean, I guess he could, but if they're not really close anyway, he's not going to call and say, hey man, what should I do? I mean, does he have any sort of friends in the company to sort of bounce things off of in this era?
Yeah. Kurt Hennig was a friend of his, and Rick had, different friends all over the business, Percy Pringle being one of them. So yeah, Rick would confide in other guys, but Rick was also his own man. Rick was a man's man.
It's just remarkable to think that after such a bright spot in the company, he's not long for this. And it definitely felt like he had tried to recreate himself, to your point, with these training vignettes and the new look and changing his hair and the whole deal. And he gets the main event spot. And I guess it's be careful what you wish for, because he's not with us much longer. I love this show. This is the first SummerSlam I remember watching live. I was so excited for this particular show. It was a big deal of my wrestling fandom as a kid. So this is one of the more important SummerSlams to me. Where do you rank this SummerSlam to you?
Well, again, selfishly, because I was on it, I did love to perform, and being on a pay-per-view still was special at that time. So for me, it ranks up there. And being a part of the Sergeant Slaughter stuff, that was a lot of fun. And so for me, selfishly, yeah, it's up in my top 5, because not only was I a part of it, but there was also some good story in the card, and going through and reminiscing that was a lot of fun.
Scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this one?
Scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, 10 being the best.
I'd say a solid 7.5, 8.
I think so too. I mean, just because of the nostalgia, I don't know, it just takes me back in time. I'm not going to say the quote unquote in-ring work, the matches, but the actual characters and storylines, it was just larger than life. And it is a bit of a departure. You know, this is the second pay-per-view now in WWF history that doesn't end with Hogan must pose. Was that a little weird for you? I mean, Hogan's at least in the last match in the main event of WrestleMania 6. Was it weird to have a pay-per-view? And I know they're both on the poster and featured prominently, both Hogan and Warrior, but is it still a little weird to end a WWF pay-per-view and Hogan's not doing the big pose down?
Believe it or not, not really. It was different. Definitely different. But, you know, we were looking at times changing and having to do different things. So you just accepted it and moved on.
ABC 717 wants to know, is it true Shawn Michaels was injured in a motorcycle accident prior to the event, and that's why he was attacked in the aisle?
I think that is what happened to him. Yes.
Yeah. Rajiv wants to know, why did some wrestlers get an entrance and others didn't? Was this just to better time the show, or was there another reason?
No, it's just a timing thing sometimes, and just the flow of the show.
Lots of people love the open of this particular pay-per-view. And they love just the opening video packages of pay-per-views in this era. Who was putting those together for you in this era? We know years later it's going to be Sahadi, but probably not in 90, right?
God, I think that I might have done this one with just the Edit One crew.
Wow.
So probably would have been Kevin Dunn and Quinn and Larry.
Sydney wants to know, was there any discussion of Sweet Sapphire being aligned with anyone else after DiBiase?
No, because we knew that it was a way to get Sapphire out and let her get back to her life. Sapphire was never going to be a long-term character for us.
William Helms wants to know, why has WWE never brought back the blue bar cage, the old big blue cage?
Because it hurts.
Well, let me just freestyle. That damn elimination chamber probably don't feel that great.
No, it hurts too. It's brutal. It's better than it was. Holy shit. It was like, can we just work on concrete instead?
I love you for that. Adam has an interesting question. He says, what was the reaction to Roddy Piper pointing out multiple times that Rick Rude should have won the match? I mean, is this sort of what you were talking about, that he's not getting the talent over? Because it does feel like Roddy was really harping on the fact that Rick Rude could have already won, but he didn't. And I don't know if it was a heel commentator, maybe he wouldn't have been doing that, you know?
But he was, in his way, that was getting Warrior over.
Okay. Charlie Thrower wants to know, who made those sweet jackets that the Hart Foundation wore to the ring? I'm guessing that Michael Jackson, which was Dave Meltzer's guess, was probably not accurate.
No. Well, Meltzer made other derogatory comments towards those jackets as well. That would have been probably Julie Youngberg and her sister Terry.
Somebody wants to know, where did Hercules get the chain that injured Shawn Michaels?
From Chains RS.
Lots of people are annoyed at the Ultimate Warrior swinging the WWF title around. They want to know what you thought of his quote unquote disrespect of the championship.
You know, I'm never crazy about it. I think the championships are something to be coveted and treated special. So I've never been a fan of anybody to do it. Even Rock and Steve when they would walk to the ring and kind of throw the belt in and things like that. However, it was during that era that I eased up on it because I thought it was, from Steve's point of view, it was one of, hey, I'm the champion. Here's the championship. This is what we're fighting about. Let's start to fight. It was different. I don't know. Everybody's different. I just was not ever really a big fan of it.
Chesler 1976 wants to know, why didn't Legion of Doom wrestle on the show? Surely their pay-per-view debut would have been a big draw.
Probably would have been, but they, wasn't time.
C. Spanta has an interesting question. He says, this is the first SummerSlam of the world title match. Even 91 would be a special attraction tag match with Warrior Hogan. Is there a reason why SummerSlams were typically tag team main events with the champ involved early on?
Early on, it was a different attraction and kind of looked at, well, like the first one in general was, hey, this is going to be a one-off, so it's got to be different than WrestleMania and everything else that we're giving you on a national basis.
Mike Eldridge wants to know, can Bruce tell the story of the origin of the blue steel cage and why Vince was such a big fan of it?
The origin of it in general dates back to Bruno and the Sheik and having a big cage that they were able to work with to escape, and that made it easier to climb, where a cyclone fence is not the easiest thing in the world to climb, as we've seen over the years.
Ben Green wants to know, why was Anvil never given an intercontinental title run? Was he not viewed as being reliable as a singles guy?
Because he never won the championship match.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up. Ladies and gentlemen, SummerSlam 1990 is in the books. We're so grateful that you stopped by and had a little fun with us. Stay tuned. You can get these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. We've got some bonus shows headed your way as well. Next week, we'll be back with The Rock's 1999 and 2000. Until next time, he is at Bruce Prichard. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here with The Rock's 99 2000 on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Did you say rock? Well, rock on.
That was lame. I'm glad you're awake now. Enjoy your English.
Oh yeah, well, why don't you go get busy on the old CDRF?
If you think I'm not going to have t-shirts
That's the
for
Conrad Dave Wrestling Federation.
What about Alvarez? I thought you wanted Alvarez involved.
Yeah, he can go under he can be under the F.
Okay. All right. Goodbye, Bruce.
Goodbye.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.